Imagine being summoned to another world as a hero and mocked when given a skill no one has ever heard of. So you choose to live out your days in peace, but your online grocery skill is more capable than it seems, naturally drawing unwanted attention from the strongest beings that roam and govern this new world. Our story opens with our MC Mukura Tsushi along with 3 other students being summoned before a princess, only to have their skills appraised by hooded figures. Kaido Saito is appraised to be a holy sword wielder, whilst Kanon Uno and Ryo Yoshida possess sacred magic along with multiple elemental affinities. The princess begs the heroes to save their kingdom of Raijseeger, but as the hooded figure scans Muta's stats, he's revealed to be a 27-year-old salaryman with the skill Online Grocery. Immediately, Mukuda hears that his unique skill has never been heard of before, ostracized as it seems the 3 other heroes are far more overpowered than himself. With everyone brought before the kingdom's king, they all learn about the Demon King invading the Raijseeger kingdom, prompting the king himself to ask for the heroes' help, and in exchange they'll be sent home once their duty is done. Heroically, Kaito, Uno, and Yoshida all agree to help the king, but Mukuda realizes something is sketchy about this whole situation, choosing to speak up as he asks to be pardoned, that way he can live a peaceful life away from this drama. Surprisingly, Mukuda is allowed to leave, handed 20 gold coins, but Mukuda is unsure about the worth of said coins. Passing through town, Mukuda garners strange looks from the town's folks, choosing to purchase a change of clothes only to pay others for information he is searching for. Mukuda chooses to stop by a grocery store to pick up some food only to pick out a place to stay, slumping into his bed as he is grateful he chose a more peaceful life. Mukuda points out how the royals were carrying such luxurious items, showing signs of greed. But before Mukuda makes plans to leave the country, he calls for his status window to appear. Mukuda reads that he is level 1 and has the skill appraise and item box. A good turnout, as he doesn't need to carry around things. As for his online grocery skill, he's still unsure how it works. Fidgeting around for a bit, Mukuda ends up tapping on the skill, only to be frightened when an ordinary-looking grocery website pops out in front of him. Sifting through the items, Mukuda starts by adding water bottles to his cart, only to move on to some bread he can eat right away. When he goes to check out, he is asked to pay for his meal, choosing to pay with a silver coin, only to receive what he ordered magically via a cardboard box. Mukuda is impressed by such a skill, swiftly munching on his bread, as he reasons such a skill was unknown to the royals and could be used to sustain him and make a profit in this new world. Making his way out of town, Mukuda is advised to head to the town of Keels near the border of the kingdom, barely managing to hitch a ride with other travelers. During his journey, he makes some small talk with a traveling merchant, learning that the merchant plans to sell some soap in Keels, an item that is considered quite luxurious. Mukuda wonders why the merchant doesn't just store his luggage in his item box. But the merchant says the item box skill is quite rare, with only 1 in 1,000 having such a skill, whereas the appraisal skill itself is the rarest of them all, with only heroes being able to wield such skills. Mukuda hears that appraisal items are precious and are strictly held by the guilds and countries. But when the merchant wonders why Mukuda is asking him such things, Mukuda manages to conceal his rare skills, reasoning that his secret should be safe as long as no one appraises him. When a merchant hears that Mukuda is planning on staying in Keels permanently, the merchant says it's a good idea, seeing as trouble is brewing in Raijseeger and rumors say the kingdom's borders will be closed soon. Right on cue, Mukuda arrives at a stop only to learn that all travel services have been suspended. Visiting a tavern, Mukuda chats with some knights, surprised that the knights plan on shifting their jobs to monster hunting, seeing as a war starting would be less favorable for them. Visiting the town's guild, Mukuda greets the receptionist only to request for escorts to help guard him to the kingdom of Venan by foot. Seeing as such a request is quite taxing, the receptionist asks that Mukuda pay 8 gold coins for his job, but seeing as he has no other choice, Mukuda reluctantly pays up. Immediately, the receptionist calls out to Werner and his party, prompting Werner from the Iron Will to introduce himself as a C-rank adventurer. Seeing as he wants to head out as soon as possible, Mukuda says he'll cook for the gang to save on expenses, something Werner is grateful for, as he says he'll get his party ready to set off tomorrow morning. Cutting to the next day, Werner introduces Vincent the swordsman, Rita the scout, Roman their mage, and finally Franca the healer. Starting on their journey, the gang remember to take breaks in between, allowing Mukuda to show off his item box skill, where he retrieves a cooking stove and pot. Mukuda remembers that a magic stove would cost him 50 gold, so instead he uses online store to purchase a gas stove, allowing him to whip up some soup and sandwiches for the gang. With every mouthful, the gang are impressed by Mukuta's cooking. But Mukuta is revealed to have used his online grocery skill to pick out some soup packets along with pre-made sandwiches. Seeing as his escort party is slowly warming up to him, they all agree to continue their journey. But with Rita as their front guard, she suddenly orders the gang to halt. Out from the nearby trees, two massive bugs fly towards them, prompting Werner and Vincent to dash towards the monsters, instantly slaying them. As Franca heals the party, Rita is seen reporting sightings of a red boar up ahead. But with Ramon's help, they escort the boar directly towards them. Stepping up to the plate once more, Vincent and Werner tag team the massive beast before them. But even as C ranks, they easily slay the creature. Harvesting the creature's flesh, the gang reasoned they can sell the hide and fangs of the boar for a good price. As for the flesh, Mukuta offers to store them in his item box. With the sun setting, the gang gather around Mukuta's cooking, all choosing to turn their backs to allow Mukuta to cook comfortably. Mukuta decides to combine the harvested bacon with some vegetables, topping the meal off with some sausages only to serve the meal with some bread. Seeing everyone scoffing down his warm stew, Mukuta is relieved they enjoy his cooking. But when Mukuta serves up a second round, he wonders why the others are so impressed by his simple cooking. Mukuta chooses to appraise the other's stats, speechless upon discovering Rita has outrageous stats for someone of her stature. Suspecting something, Mukuta appraises the stew he made, realizing the food items he brought using the online grocery store are giving his party MP and strength boost, a horrifying discovery, as such a skill can become dangerous in the wrong hands. Choosing to keep his discovery a secret, we pan out to see a mysterious creature stalking our party from the bushes. Continuing their journey the next day, they make substantial progress towards the Venan Kingdom, all reasoning that it'll be 2 to 3 days left until they'll part ways. But seeing as night has fallen, they all prioritize setting up camp. Heading off on his own, Mukuta takes out some of the harvest boar meat, first slicing them into pieces only to marinate them in some ginger sauce he purchased online. Next, Mukuta finally chops up some cabbage, only to retrieve his gas stove, beginning to fry the marinated pork, but the sheer smell of the pork draws in the attention of the onlookers. Serving up the ginger marinated pork alongside the cabbage, the gang are instantly blown away by the succulent flavors that fills their mouths with each bite. But as Mukuta goes into the logistics of his cooking, Werner begins to quiver, pointing out the monstrous creature that has snuck up on them. The creature demands to be fed, forcing Mukuta to feed it some of the marinated pork, but seeing as the monster's hunger is yet to be satiated, Mukuta rushes off to cook some more. Batch after batch, Mukuta hastily feeds the creature, finally able to satisfy its hunger only after he's exhausted his supplies. Having taken a liking to Mukuta, the monster agrees to form a contract with Mukuta, making it his familiar, and seeing as he doesn't have a choice, Mukuta reluctantly agrees, turning white when he hears the monster demand to be fed 3 times a day. The monster says they must be given a name, refusing to accept an ordinary name, but seeing as the monster is a Fenrir, Mukuta settles for Fel. Proceeding the next day, the gang gets some horrified looks, especially since Fel is nonchalantly trotting alongside them. Plus, in the past, a Fenrir destroyed the entire country. Werner says Fel is guaranteed to draw attention from Venan's higher-ups, but Mukuta panics, seeing as he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. As the gang set up for lunch, Mukuta realizes they're running low on the boar meat they harvested, demanding that Fel go hunt for more meat, seeing as Fel requested that every meal contain meat. Fel admits that's a reasonable request, immediately dashing off to hunt down some prey. But in the meantime, Mukuta is praised for managing to command around the powerful Fenrir. At that moment, Fel returns with the corpse of a rock bird, a B-rank monster that Werner admits even their party couldn't take out. With the gang helping to extract the bird's flesh, Mukuta retrieves some teriyaki sauce, choosing to fry up the bird meat alongside the sauce only to serve it alongside some onion soup. Mukuta chooses to serve his party first, choosing to spend the rest of the time cooking and feeding Fel, ultimately using up the entirety of the rockbird. Having finally made it to the border of Kingdom Venan, Mukuta notices the kingdom's knights rallying outside the border, realizing that it's due to Fel's presence. Werner offers to speak with the knights, heading first towards the border, only for the rest of the gang to follow suit, ultimately greeted by Edgar, the captain of the knights. Edgar demands to know what Fel's intentions of entering the kingdom are, but Fel simply utters that it is Mukuta's familiar and it has no reason to harm the kingdom of Venan. Seeing as Fel is quite tamed, Edgar permits the gang to cross their border, but gets intrigued seeing the legendary Fenrir listen to Mukuta so willingly. Entering the checking station, Mukuta realizes he doesn't have a guild card, so he is forced to pay to enter, but regardless, Mukuta is just relieved to have made it to his destination. Werner warns Mukuta that the king will surely want to meet with Fel and Mukuta, but Mukuta reveals he won't be staying for long, as he plans to travel the world. Werner suggests that Mukuta apply at the Adventurers or Merchant Guild to ensure he can cross into any country without needing to pay a tax like earlier. Mukuta reasons that the Merchant Guild is best for him since he can sell the items he cooks for a profit, but the gang remind Mukuta that the Adventurers Guild can help carve up the monsters Fel catches, and Mukuta can still make a profit from the monster droppings. Seeing Mukuta conflicted, the gang reveal that Mukuta can apply to be both a merchant and adventurer, all heading towards the town's guild. But during the process, Mukuta pays another tax to enter into the town. Out of nowhere, Mukuta is greeted by Edmund, a servant of Margrave Lindell, swiftly inviting Mukuta and Fel to meet his master. Mukuta hesitates to accept, but Edmund is very persistent, forcing Fel to step in, declaring that it knows Edmund and his master are after its powers. Fel successfully scares away Edmund, leading Werner to explain that nobles are only after status and power, plus the Margraves won't have enough manpower to force Fel into submission. Fel mentions how the ancient dragon it fought 400 years ago was the only creature worthy of its time, but seeing as their escort job is finished, Werner asks for Mukuta's signature to confirm they finished their task. Mukuta realizes he can read and write, a feature of being a hero, but just like that, Mukuta part ways with the others who are heading to the Adventurers Guild. Mukuta and Fel choose to visit the Merchants Guild, entering the building only to draw the attention of everyone in the room. But regardless, Mukuta greets the receptionist Michaela, asking to register as a merchant. Michaela gets to work explaining that the Merchants Guild isn't owned by any country and is composed of 5 ranks, with one's yearly fee, business type, and overall operation size determining said rank. Mukuta says he plans on traveling and opening food stalls where he pleases, something that classifies Mukuta into the lowest rank of iron. With Mukuta finally registered and given his merchant's card, he confirms that the guild buys monster drops. But first, Mukuta checks into his inn, showing off the stable Fel will have to stay in for the night. With it getting late, Mukuta gets started on dinner, piling up some meat for Fel only to wonder how he can satisfy his craving for rice. Mukuta chooses to invest in another stove to cook the rice, all whilst grilling the steaks in a separate pan, intentionally keeping them quite rare, just how Fel likes its meat. Topping the steak with some soy sauce, Fel instantly gobbles up the meat, demanding more, but Mukuta chooses to switch out the sauces to see which combination Fel prefers. After feeding Fel, Mukuta gets excited seeing as his rice is finally ready, carefully scooping out a bowl of rice only to top it with some steak and sauce, immediately devouring the meal. With Fel helping to clean up any leftover food, Mukuta is seen leaping into bed, but remembers to prepare the items he plans to sell the next day. Heading to the Merchants Guild the next day, Mukuta shows off the items he plans to sell, but Michaela gets shocked upon inspecting the items, quickly asking Mukuta to follow her to a separate room. Introduced to the Guildmaster, the Guildmaster reveals that the salt and pepper Mukuta plans on selling is so valuable it could be a gift for royals. The Guildmaster asks to personally purchase the item, offering up 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 gold coins for the pepper, piquing Mukuta's interest as he purchased the salt and pepper for a measly 5 copper coins, each from his online store. Mukuta remembers that pepper used to be as valuable as gold in the past, but seeing Mukuta deep in thought, the Guildmaster mistakes it for hesitation, choosing to offer up 17 gold for both the salt and pepper. With Mukuta accepting the purchase, he reasons he shouldn't exploit such a trade too often, heading outside only to direct his attention to the Adventurers Guild. Mukuta is greeted by Bianca, the guild's receptionist, who hands Mukuta a form to fill out for his guild membership, paying no attention to Mukuta, only to toss him his guild card once the paperwork is done. Seeing Bianca brush him off, Mukuta asks for an explanation on how the rank and quest systems work, prompting Bianca to reluctantly utter that adventures all start at J rank and the highest attainable rank is S rank. Adventurers can accept a quest 1 rank higher or equal to one's current rank, and that there is a validity period for an adventurer's rank. Plus, G ranks must accept a quest each month. Viewing the quest board, Mukuta reasons he should get started on a herb gathering quest. But first, Mukuta whips up some more steak for Fel. Mukuta gets curious as to how strong Fel truly is, using his appraisal skill on the beast, only to be speechless seeing Fel's maxed out stats. Waking up bright and early the next day, Mukuda heads to wash his face, only to hear Fel growling at him, demanding to be fed a filling breakfast. Putting together a quick breakfast, Mukuda and Fel head out for their herb-gathering quest, reasoning that Mukuda himself should gather some herb whilst Fel hunts for their next meal. Fel suddenly detects monsters roaming nearby, swiftly casting a protective barrier to ensure its master's safety, only to part ways as Fel rushes to hunt down some monsters. Taking out the quest, Mukuda sees that he needs to gather Caillou and Maj grass, using his appraisal on the nearby field only to see that there is only weeds growing nearby. Heading a little deeper, Mukuda successfully hunts down both Caillou and Maj grass, reasoning he should take back some extra just to be safe. Seeing as his quest is already finished, Mukuda gets started on lunch, using his online store to purchase some beef, pork, meat sauce, and pasta. Mukuda first dices and sauté the onions, only to add the meats and sauce, but suddenly Fel returns with another rock bird. Fel mentions that it hunted other prey and left it nearby, but for now Mukuda focuses on boiling and salting the pasta, serving the pasta and the sauce only to top off the dish with some Parmesan cheese and parsley. Inspecting the dish, Fel is skeptical at the vine-looking dish, but with a single slurp, Fel begins to devour the spaghetti dish before him. Mukuda is glad he can still enjoy the foods he loved in his original world, suddenly bursting out laughing when he sees Fel is all dirty from shoving its face in the meat dish. Finally heading to inspect Fel's other prey, Mukuda scans the monster corpses, realizing that Fel has brought back a giant deer, black serpent, and murderous grizzly only to store them away in his item box. Mukuda does notice that Fel has brought back some orcs, skeptical if they're edible, but Fel reassures Mukuda that humans eat orcs all the time. Seeing as everything is done, Fel offers to give Mukuda a ride back into town, instantly dashing through the forest and towards town, but Fel's sheer speed almost knocks out Mukuda. Back inside the guild, Bianca is impressed that a G rank managed to gather so many herbs, handing Mukuda the pay for the quest along with the excess herbs he picked. Before Bianca leaves, Mukuda mentions how he would like to sell some monsters his familiar had hunted down, but Bianca is clearly too distracted adoring how fluffy Fel looks. Bianca points Mukuda to the guild's butcher, but upon learning that Mukuda has quite a heap of monster corpses he needs to sell, the butcher asks Mukuda to follow him out back. The butcher is glad to have finally met Mukuda, mentioning how there were rumors of him around town, but when Mukuda shows off the A-rank and B-rank monsters Fel slaughtered, the butcher becomes speechless. Mukuda says he needs to harvest the meat from all of the corpses, something the butcher says he'll have ready by tomorrow, but seeing as Fel is getting hungry, the butcher agrees to harvest an orc first. With a slab of pork in front of him, Mukuda says he'll use the parsley and Parmesan cheese from earlier, first slicing up the pork only to pound it thinner, covering it with an egg flour mixture, and finally frying in the pan. Mukuda chooses to add parsley and cheese to the dish, serving up 2 styles of pork piccata along with any leftover sauces. As our duo devour the meal, we see Mukuda returning to the butcher the next day, amazed the man was able to separate everything in a single day. The butcher also hands Mukuda his pay for the monster droppings, frightening Mukuda when he learns his payment is 202 gold coins. The butcher says the orc testicles, boar skin, and monster fangs are ultimately what yielded such a high payout, plus A rank and stronger monsters drop magic stones. Mukuda is grateful to the butcher for teaching him such things, hearing that the butcher used to be an adventurer and that Mukuda could probably get away with calling Fel a great wolf instead of a Fenrir to attract less attention. With nothing left to do in town, Mukuda and Fel continue their exploration of this new world, choosing to travel all day only to stop and set up camp once the sun begins to set. Seeing as Fel had earned him a lot today, Mukuda asks what Fel wants for dinner, but as Mukuda scrolls through his online store for takeout food options, Fel can't help but drool profusely. Settling on an assortment of meats, Fel takes his time gobbling each individual lump of meat, but off to the side Mukuda starts to cook up some Japanese black wagyu, serving up a single wagyu steak to Fel. Fel is quite disappointed at his portion size, but upon tasting the steak, Fel can't help but admire the sheer tenderness the way the wagyu feels in its mouth. Mukuda hears that since monsters roam the world, there's no need to raise or domesticate animals. But as the duo wrap up their well-earned meal for the night, Fel is seen all fired up, noting how Mukuda's meal is giving it extra strength that could even rival the ancient dragon and its sworn rival. Curious, Mukuda appraises Fel's stats, shocked to see his food has buffed all of Fel's stats by 50%. Too restless, Fel swiftly casts another barrier to protect Mukuda whilst it's gone, speeding off into the night only to leave Mukuda to set up his sleeping bed for the night. Happily tucking himself in his Fel's barrier is putting him at ease. With Mukuda fast asleep, we see Fel encountering a rock bird only to take it down with a single swipe. Up next, a giant deer catches Fel's attention, but a single lightning spell dispatches the deer. Noticing a swarm of orcs nearby, Fel leaps into the epicenter of the gathering, immediately wiping out the horde with a torrential wind spell, only to notice an orc general appear. Sadly, the orc general's movements are far too slow, allowing Fel to slay it with a single swipe, but suddenly a chimera appears. Having just gotten started, Fel's roar sounds throughout the night, and by daytime Mukuda is in disbelief seeing all the monsters Fel had slain whilst he was sleeping. Hearing that Fel was able to take down a chimera with a single attack, Mukuda declares that the Black Wagyu will be removed from their meals moving forwards, especially since it gave Fel too great of a buff. In the coming days, we see Mukuda cook up a cockatrice with some soy sauce and lemon glaze, sitting down to enjoy a sandwich only to ask how Fel hunts. Fel says he uses mainly his teeth and claws, and only uses magic to eliminate weaker creatures, mostly wind magic, seeing as Fel had been blessed by the goddess Ninrir. Mukuda wonders if he can use magic too, opening up his system terminal only to confirm that he has a magic stat, but wonders how he can cast his first spell. Fel says you only need to think of casting a spell to use magic, but Mukuda says a genius like Fel won't be able to teach him, choosing instead to picture a fireball, but when Mukuda tries casting a spell, nothing happens. Seeing Mukuda embarrassed, Fel says Mukuda must allow magic to flow through his body first, asking Mukuda to touch its fur to feel the sensation of magic flowing through him, only to ask Mukuda to replicate the feeling himself. Setting up a can, Mukuda conjures a mini fireball, but his cast strength is far too pathetic to strike the target. Fel suggests that they engage in actual monster combat to help Mukuda grow, but upon seeing Mukuda wimping out, Fel drags Mukuda deeper into the forest. Discovering some goblins, Fel asks Mukuda to attack them, but Mukuda fears that the goblin swarm will be too much for him. Annoyed, Fel howls, drawing the goblins' attention towards Mukuda, who hurriedly flees. Running alongside Mukuda, Fel instructs Mukuda to continuously cast spells to survive, only to leave for now, as Fel wants to hunt monsters as well. Seeing no other way out, Mukuda manages to fire off 2 fireballs, but accidentally trips over a rock when he gets too distracted. With the horde now pouncing on Mukuda, Mukuda is suddenly protected by the barrier Fel had casted earlier, and seeing as he still needs to fight off the goblins, Mukuda lets rip several more fireballs. With only a few remaining, Mukuda musters his remaining strength to cast a final greater fireball, but having no strength left, Mukuda collapses to the ground. As the remaining goblins approach Mukuda, Fel arrives intercepting the goblins, but as Mukuda finally falls unconscious, he awakens later that night angry at Fel for putting him through that experience. Fel says Mukuda should be thankful since Mukuda can now use magic. Plus, Fel says he can detect Mukuda's level has risen, something Mukuda confirms as he is now level 3 with the fire magic unlocked. As a gift, Fel shows off a Goblin King he has hunted, and even though goblin flesh is not edible, Fel says Mukuda can still cash in a magic stone the goblin has. Fel says he wants to be rewarded with a meal, hinting at the fact that a Wagyu steak may suffice, but Mukuda says he won't be serving Wagyu anytime soon, especially since Fel was too energetic afterwards. When Mukuda prepares to start cooking, he suddenly collapses onto his knees once more, declaring that they'll have to buy stuff online for their dinner, seeing as he's too tired. Served up a massive plate of dessert buns. Fel watches as Mukuda nibbles on a melon bun, following his lead as he too devours his platter of desserts. As Mukuda serves up seconds, he warns Fel not to eat too many sweets or he'll become sick, but Fel says his blessing from the goddess Ninrir makes him immune to any poisons of debuffs. Mukuda can't help but get jealous, screaming out into the night sky to be blessed as well, all whilst a mysterious being listens to Mukuda's pleas. Reaching their next town, Mukuda is cornered by some knights who are threatened by Fel, but luckily Mukuda's guild card calms down the knights, seeing as Fel is registered as Mukuda's familiar. Fel gets annoyed when others call him a great wolf, using telepathy to communicate with Mukuda, seeing as they are master and slave technically. One of the knights reminds Mukuda that he is responsible for any damages Fel may inflict, but as the duo head through town, they reason they should find a map to see where they're heading next. Checking into the Elmira's Inn, Mukuda asks Fel to wait for him only to leave Fel with some snacks so he doesn't run off. Visiting the town's bookstore, Mukuda stumbles onto a book that teaches basic magic, only to be shocked to hear the book will cost 7 gold coins, especially since paper is quite rare in this world. As for a world map, Mukuda hears that such an item is considered a nationally restricted item, ultimately forced to leave empty-handed. Having failed to learn anything from the town's library as well, Mukuda returns to a starving Fel, annoyed to hear that Fel wants to be fed. Seeing as they need food quickly, Mukuda chooses to purchase some yakitori and tonkatsu from his online store, pleasing Fel as they resemble the boar and rockbird they ate previously. Needing to eat himself, Mukuda ends up steaming some rice, only to enjoy it with some leftover pork cutlets and dipping sauce, all whilst Fel drools over the meal. Exploring town the next day, Mukuda stumbles into a bar only to approach some men to ask them a few questions. When the men refuse, Mukuda buys them a few drinks, cheering up the mood as they gladly invite Mukuda to sit down. Mukuda starts by uttering that he traveled from the kingdom of Rager and it's his first time in the kingdom of Venin. But immediately, the men mention how the kingdom of Rager has started several wars in an attempt to claim more land once the new king took over. Mukuda hears that the kingdom of Ermin and the kingdom of Leonhard in the east are safe places, plus there are dungeons for adventurers to explore. Mukuda is grateful for the information, but voices how upsetting it is he has yet to find a map. Coincidentally, the men before him reveal a map of their own, having obtained it from a fellow adventurer. The men offer to pass it down to Mukuda, seeing as they've already memorized it, even agreeing to sell it to Mukuda for a measly gold coin. Unable to pass up the opportunity, Mukuda agrees to buy the map. But as the men leave, the remaining people in the bar laugh at Mukuda, revealing that the map he bought could have easily been purchased at the guild for a single silver coin. Taking the hit and learning from the loss, Mukuda and Fel continue on feet eastwards to the country next to the sea, a location that should house sea serpents and krakens. In the realm of gods, we see Ninrir wondering why Fel had contracted with a human, continuing to monitor Fel and Mukuda. Back with our duo, we see Fel speeding past a forest, only to arrive near the sea. Fel says he's fiending for some seafood, nonchalantly approaching the body of water only to unleash a devastating lightning spell that slays countless fish. Fel says Mukuda is free to collect as many fish as he needs, and the remainder should return back to normal after their paralysis wears off. Getting to work, Mukuda starts off by collecting some violet trouts, only to encounter a bigger-looking king trout. But when Fel asks Mukuda to retrieve a purple-looking fish, Mukuda appraises it to be a poisonous lake fish. Mukuda instantly tosses the poisonous fish back into the water, reminding Fel that his human body won't be able to withstand poison, instead settling for the other fishes. Mukuda and Fel proceed to gather firewood only to start a fire with Mukuda's fire magic, followed by Mukuda buying flour, butter, and mushrooms. Next, Mukuda washes and guts the fishes, seasoning them with salt only to skewer and roast them over a fire. Moving on to the king trout, Mukuda begins filleting the fish, switching things up by wrapping up the king trout in some foil alongside some seasoning, placing this batch alongside the fire to cook. Finally, Mukuda moves on to the remainder of the fish, battering them only to grill them like normal. With 3 different fish dishes completed, the boys tuck into their dinner, prompting Mukuda to take out a can of beer to pair it with the fishy meal. With every bite of fish and sip of beer, Mukuda gets lost in the endless flavors in his mouth. But suddenly Fel cries for more fish, forcing Mukuda back onto his feet as he continues to fry up some more fish. Having stuffed themselves, Mukuda mentions how their dinner reminded him of camping. But as he heads to clean up, he suddenly bumps into a slime. Fel reasons that they shouldn't worry about an insignificant creature like a slime ruining their night. And when Mukuda pokes at the slime, he can't help but adore it. Checking its stats, Mukuda confirms that the slime was born 3 days ago and has very low stats. But when Mukuda sees that the slime is hungry, he feels bad since there is no food left. Surprisingly, the slime hops over to the rubbish that is piled up, slowly dissolving the rubbish Mukuda was supposed to clean up, but Mukuda steps in when it begins to dissolve his cooking utensils. In mere moments, the slime had helped Mukuda clean up any trash left over, earning some praise from Mukuda as he gives the slime a tight hug. Fel reveals that the affection Mukuda just showed the slime created a contract with it, and now the slime is Mukuda's familiar, something Mukuda confirms when he checks his status window. With a new companion added, Mukuda gives the slime the name of Sway. Cutting to a few days later where Mukuda is training his earth magic, having discovered recently he had an affinity for it. Seeing Mukuda's slow progression, Fel offers to find more monsters to challenge Mukuda's growth, but Mukuda blatantly refuses, instead sitting down for a break alongside Sway. Mukuda notes how big Sway has grown, having progressed from level 1 to 8 in 3 days. Strange since Sway has only been eating the trash that's been piling up. Seeing as everyone is getting hungry, Mukuda quickly whips together some miso stir-fried orc meat atop some rice and lettuce, something Fel instantly gobbles up. Mukuda had made extra, so Sway could eat with them, all three sitting down to appreciate the salty and tender dish. As Fel and Sway dust off their plates, they both ask for seconds, only to cut to later that night where our trio are stuffed. Checking Sway's stats, Mukuda confirms that his cooked meals give temporary buffs, adoring Sway as it helps clean off the dirty dishes and bowls left over from his cooking, reminding Mukuda that they should celebrate Sway's first meal. Mukuda chooses to prepare some red bean buns and hot tea for everyone, a food that makes Fel crave desserts more and is an item that makes Sway hop around gleefully. The next day, Fel is seen staring off into the distance, only to wake Mukuda up as they need to discuss something serious. Fel reveals that Ninrir had sent him a divine message last night, uttering that Ninrir is willing to bless Mukuda if he offers up a payment of sweets every week. Although Mukuda is confused, Fel continues by stating that the blessing Mukuda will receive is a minor blessing that can still grant immunity to most illnesses, but instant death and powerful curses are still a threat. Luckily, such a blessing will boost Mukuda's magic capabilities, but Fel emphasizes that Mukuda needs to offer up sweets once every week, annoying Mukuda as it's obvious that Ninrir clearly just likes sweets. As Mukuda accepts such a deal, he wonders how he can send his offering to Ninrir, hearing that any item can be made into an altar as long as Mukuda means what he is praying for. The final thing Fel mentions is that the first offering must contain certain dessert breads, but seeing as there is no reason to refuse, Mukuda prepares the breads alongside some coffee. With his hands clasped, Mukuda offers up the food items to Ninrir, watching the food items vanish, and in exchange Mukuda receives a minor blessing from the goddess. Following Ninri, she is seen quivering, having finally received the dessert breads she had been watching our trio eat. With a single bite, Ninrir is overjoyed by the delectable treat, even flushing down the scrumptious treats with the coffee Mukuda sent only to continue to stuff her face with the other sweets. Getting back to training, Mukuda tries out one of his rock spells, amazed to see that Ninrir's blessing has improved his strength and control over his magic. Additionally, Sway has reached level 13, motivating Mukuda to work harder and get stronger. But after a few hours of training, Mukuda decides to refuel with some sweets. Combining some chocolate with some coffee, Mukuda shares his meal with Sway, both awaiting Fel's return. After some more waiting, Fel finally returns, instantly sniffing out the chocolate Mukuda had snacked on whilst he was gone, forcing Mukuda to purchase some more chocolate to quench Fel's cravings. To make things worse, Ninrir telepathically orders for Mukuda to send her some chocolate as well, shyly uttering that she had already finished the sweets he sent her, so she needs some more. Reluctantly, Mukuda agrees, only for Fel to rush Mukuda onto his back, horrified to hear that Mukuda's training isn't going well, only to whisper under his breath that they'll need to visit a certain location after all. Arriving before a cave, Fel utters that it is actually a dungeon before them and Mukuda will need battle experience to train his new earth magic. Seeing Mukuda try to sneak away, Fel swiftly tosses Mukuda back towards the dungeon, reassuring Mukuda that the dungeon is only filled with weaklings, but Mukuda says they're weak only to Fel. Fel reminds Mukuda that one day he won't be able to fully protect Mukuda, finally giving Mukuda the courage to tackle the dungeon. But first Mukuda declares he'll need to eat first. Ordering tons of takeout, Mukuda finally tells Fel about the stats boost his food grants, and since Mukuda can't tell what foods boost which stats, he simply begins to gorge on spread in front of him. Only tasting each food item, Mukuda hands the leftovers to Sway, who helps clean up any mess, whilst also leveling up from consuming non-food items. As Mukuda finishes up tasting the desserts, he comments on how full he is, and upon checking his stats, he confirms that everything is boosted by 20%. With Fel and Sway eating the leftovers, Mukuda sees that their stats went up as well, and with Fel casting his barrier on Mukuda, they finally enter the dungeon with Mukuda wielding a sword. As Mukuda slowly treks into the cave. He suddenly encounters a slime, wondering if he should slay it since Sway is present, but in an instant Sway spits out some acid, instantly slaying the opposing slime. Fel is impressed that Sway had learnt such a skill, all watching as Mukuda follows up with a stone bullet to attack an incoming slime, only for Sway to finish off a second approaching slime. Mukuda is freaked out hearing that the dungeon will absorb anything that dies in it, including the slime corpses before them. But as they venture deeper, Fel warns Mukuda that horned rabbits are on the next floor. With the rabbits rushing Mukuda, he aimlessly swings his sword around, only to move on the next floor where Mukuda faces some goblins with his fire magic. Mukuda does wonder why monsters are still attacking with Fel present, hearing that monsters in the dungeon attack anything that enters, suddenly running into kobolds on the next floor. At first, Mukuda attempts to flee, but seeing no other escape, Mukuda manages to unleash 2 earth projectiles that flatten the kobolds, amazing Mukuda himself. Fel reminds Mukuda to grow stronger whilst in the dungeon, all heading into the deepest floor of the dungeon. But horrifically, Mukuda encounters hundreds of kobold guarding the last floor. When Mukuda tries running away again, Fel stops him, allowing Sway to help this time with clearing the floor, plus Fel himself can always step in if things get hectic. Seeing Sway pumped up, Fel shoves the pair towards the enemy, alerting the kobolds to Mukuda's presence as they all simultaneously lunge at Mukuda. Luckily, Fel's barrier repels the attacking monsters, giving Sway the opening to slay several kobolds with its acid spit. Mukuda rushes to join in, casting several stone bullets in tandem with Sway's acid spit to clear out the majority of the attackers. After a while, only 2 kobolds remain, both seemingly fleeing the scene, but out of nowhere their corpses are flung out of hiding, revealing the boss of the dungeon, the Kobold King. Fel says the king has appeared since his subordinates have been slain, but out of nowhere the king locks onto Mukuda, forcing him to flee. With Mukuda attempting to take down the creature with his stone bullets, he realizes that the projectiles simply deflect off the king's tough exterior, panicking as he can only flee from the king's axe swings. To make things worse, Fel mentions how his barrier won't completely protect Mukuda, forcing Mukuda to steal his resolve as he conjures a far greater stone bullet than the rest, managing to strike the king directly in the head. With the Kobold King's head recoiling, it suddenly recovers, opting to use its claws to attack Mukuda, but before Mukuda can retaliate, he suddenly feels dizzy having exhausted his mana. Left wide open, Mukuda is once again saved by Fel's barrier, realizing that Fel was lying to force Mukuda to grow. With the Kobold King fixated on breaching Fel's barrier, Sway fires off a beam of acid, instantly disintegrating the creature. But before Mukuda faints from fatigue, he notices Sway glowing. Back outside, Mukuda awakens from his slumber, reassuring Sway that he's fine, but strangely enough, Sway can now communicate with him. Mukuda pulls Sway in for a hug, checking her stats only to see that she's evolved from a baby slime to a slime, explaining why Sway was glowing earlier. To top things off, Sway is already level 7 after her levels reset. As for Mukuda, he is officially level 7 with Earth Magic as a new skill, but sadly he is still weaker than Sway. Mukuda hears that Fel left a while ago, but in the meantime Mukuda wonders if Sway is a rare breed for her kind, but right on cue Fel returns. Mukuda realizes Fel went out to hunt and eat since he got hungry. Still annoyed, Fel lied to him about his barrier breaking, but Mukuda is grateful since Fel pushed him out of his comfort zone. Seeing as everyone is hungry, Mukuda browses the online store to pick up some eggs, fish stock, soy sauce, and rice, only to begin cutting up some onions and rockbird. Next, Mukuda simmers the ingredients in a broth base, only to top everything off with some eggs, adding the mixture to some rice to reveal a rice bowl. As our trio devour the well-earned meal, they choose to rest up afterwards, but Mukuda suddenly bursts out laughing hearing Sway call Fel her uncle. Since Sway is only 14 days old and Fel is 1,000 years old, it makes sense, but feeling embarrassed, Fel roars, demanding to be addressed simply as Fel. Scared, Sway begins to shiver and cry, leaping into Mukuda's arms as he teases Fel for being mean. Giving in, Fel permits only Sway to address him as uncle, exciting Sway as it seems they've all grown closer. Entering into a domain filled with orthros and griffins, Fel declares they'll be charging right through instead of going around to save on time. But Mukuda says those monsters are considered boss-level threats. Fel reminds Mukuda that he can't be defeated, first running through the Orthros territory, but within mere seconds our gang are swarmed by a pack of Orthros. Although most of the Orthros can recognize that Fel is stronger than them, a lone younger Orthros chooses to challenge Fel, prompting Mukuta and Sway to run for cover. As the young Orthros rushes Fel simply waves his paw, shooting a burst of wind magic that shreds the attacker. Fel gives the other Orthros a chance to flee, all whilst Fel explains that technique he just used, but Mukuta is too busy admiring how cute Sway is for wanting to learn Fel's technique. At night, the gang set up camp, but when Mukuta heads to retrieve some water, he flinches at everything, fearing something may attack him. Fel says their earlier confrontation should have warned any attackers to stay away, and seeing as everyone is getting hungry, Mukuta heads to prepare the stoves. Mukuta asks Fel how much longer it'll take to arrive at their destination, shocked that they're only halfway and it'll probably take another 3 weeks to reach their end goal. Mukuta fears they'll run out of meat soon, choosing to retrieve some black serpent meat alongside a variety of other ingredients. Mukuta starts by trimming the flesh off the bone, only to dice up the serpent meat as if it were chicken. Mukuta then starts tossing the serpent meat with some seasoning and chili sauces, ultimately serving up some chili black serpent, relieved to see the serpent taste fine. With both Sway and Fel impatient, Mukuta rushes to feed his starving familiars, suddenly realizing that there are only scraps left over, as Mukuta settle for a sandwich filled with the leftover chili serpent. The next day, the gang enter into Griffin territory, but make a pit stop when Fel detects some rare healing mushrooms nearby. When eaten, the mushrooms can heal wounds or broken bones, and seeing as there is quite a lot of mushrooms present, Mukuta starts collecting them while Sway devours some. After a while, Sway is seen glowing again, but although Sway seems fine, Mukuta checks her stats to make sure. Surprisingly, Sway has learnt the skill of healing potion creation. A feature Fel suspects is due to Sway eating healing mushrooms, as slimes tend to evolve based on what it eats. Mukuta praises Sway for learning such a useful skill, asking Sway to try it out only to watch Sway oozing out a strange liquid. As Mukuta catches the liquid in a bottle, he inspects the substance only to see it is a high-quality liquid that can heal things from impending death. With Sway showing off other types of healing potions it can create, Fel admits that he has never seen such an intelligent and skilled slime like Sway before, something Mukuta celebrates as he hit the jackpot with Sway. In the next 3 days, the gang finally encounter their first griffin, but as the creature flies towards the gang, it suddenly greets Fel with its head hung low. The griffin begs Fel to duel it, as it wants to become head of its pack, and seeing as the griffin is willing to give its life to prove itself, Fel accepts the duel. Off to the side, Mukuta asks that Fel not slay the griffin, but as the duel starts, the griffin leads with several slashes that Fel evades. Fel chooses to kick the griffin away, but the griffin simply sends out several feather projectiles, forcing Fel to dodge, all whilst creating a smoke screen in favor of the griffin. The griffin uses the smoke screen to dive in and out for attacks on Fel, but getting a little annoyed, Fel unleashes a tornado that clears the smoke, all whilst capturing the griffin in the eye of the storm. Mukuta screams for Fel to let the griffin live, forcing Fel to release the griffin from the tornado, but the griffin is too beaten up to move. Quickly, Mukuta and Sway heal the griffin with Sway's healing liquid, but seeing the griffin depressed, Mukuta points out that the griffin was able to land a hit onto Fel. Surprised it was able to harm the legendary Fenrir, the griffin roars, attracting its kind only to declare that it has become leader of its pack thanks to Fel. Before the griffin leads with its pack, it hands Mukuta one of its feathers, promising to not intervene with the gang moving forward. That night, Mukuta thanks Fel for clearing things up with the griffin, reasoning that he should use the rest of their meat to reward Fel. Mukuta opts to batter and season the remainder of their orc meat, deep frying it only to serve it beside some cabbage and sauce, a meal both Fel and Sway gladly devour. With Mukuta whipping up second for the gang, he is reminded by Fel to send offerings to Ninrir, cutting to a few days later where the gang have finally emerged from the forest. Mukuta celebrates a month and a half worth of traveling, checking the map to see that they're close to the kingdom of Leonhard, and seeing as they're basically out of meat, the gang sprint to search for any man-made roads. Off in the distance, Mukuta spots a caravan being attacked by bandits, ordering Fel to save them in exchange for a luxury meal later. Enticed by the offer, Fel rushes towards the caravan, all whilst we see Lars desperately fending off the bandits, all whilst Lambert is ordered to remain hiding in the caravan. Right on cue, Fel leaps into the air, drawing everyone's attention as he orders the bandits to freeze and relinquish their weapons. Overwhelmed by Fel's presence, the bandits give in, allowing the bandits to be tied up safely. Lambert introduces himself as the owner of the caravan, and Lars is the leader of the Phoenix Adventure Party that had been employed to escort Lambert, all grateful to Mukuda for saving them. Lambert mentions how they're heading to the city of Carolina, the northwestern city in the kingdom of Leonhardt, and seeing as it's convenient for them as well, Mukuda agrees to accompany everyone to the kingdom of Leonhardt. Traveling all day, Mukuda ends up hearing rumors from the guards that Fel is either a great wolf or a Fenrir, and that the rumors spread fast due to letters being exchanged via a magic teleportation tool. Mukuda ends up feeling bad for Fel since most nobles want to tame and use Fel for their own benefit. And to make things worse, Mukuda himself has a rare item box, appraisal skill, and even the online grocery skill. All things that will cause a massive stir if leaked. That night, everyone decides to set up camp for the night, but Fel reminds Mukuda he promised to serve him a luxury meal, forcing our trio to separate from the main group as he prepares to cook up some meat for everyone. Mukuda reports that only meat scraps are left, but wanting to make the most of the remaining meat, Mukuda ends up dicing up and battering the remaining meat only to deep fry them. Mukuda also uses up the sauces to season them, pleasing Sway as she gobbles down the meal. As for Fel, he can't help but devour the meat before him. As Mukuda continues to serve batch after batch, the scent from his cooking ultimately reaches the other men, drawing them towards his mini hideout as he's forced to serve them food as well. Now with the men joining in, Mukuda works overtime to please everyone, unable to save any for himself. Grateful for the meal, Lars and his men promise to protect Mukuda whilst they rest, only to glare at the bandits, ordering them to behave. When the bandits refuse to be quiet, Mukuda speaks up, reminding the bandits that Fel will rip them to shreds if they disrupt their beauty sleep. The next day, Mukuda finally arrives at Carolina, the 5th largest city in Leonhardt, a place where Lambert's family have been leather merchants for generations. Seeing as Lars is heading to the guild to report the bandits they captured, Mukuda promises to visit Lambert's store later, first accompanying Lars to the town's guild. Surprisingly, Mukuda learns that his G-rank license had been revoked since he hasn't accepted a quest for over a month, learning from Annette that most G-ranks try getting to F rank as soon as possible. That way he'll have a 3-month grace period between quests. Seeing as he won't make the same mistake twice, Mukuda asks to re-register his guild license, this time reporting that Sway is a new familiar he wants to register, but this only makes other adventurers mock him for taming a slime. Afterwards, Mukuda asks where he can submit the monsters he's collected, only for Lars to ask if he and his men can watch, curious as to what monsters Fel had slain. Seeing the massive monster pile, Lars and his men are speechless, but Mukuda continues to pile up the corpses, stopping just before he adds the Chimera corpse. Johan the Butcher is impressed to be given the chance to carve up so many corpses, but Mukuda asks if it's fine to have his monsters butcher in places other than the guild, but Johan advises against it since non-licensed butchers are sketchy. In mere moments, Johan perfectly extracts a portion of the red serpent's delicate skin, making Mukuda and Fel crave the taste of the serpent's meat. Lars suddenly realizes something, asking what meats were served to them last night, but upon hearing that Mukuda had served them A-rank and B-rank monsters, Lars and his men immediately apologize for stuffing themselves with such rare monster meat. Mukuda is surprised at first, but reassures the men it was fine, something Lars can't accept as he promises to assist Mukuda if anything arises in the future. Checking into the Griffin in that night, Mukuda reasons that he should reach F rank whilst he's in town, plus he needs the guild's butcher to help extract the meat for their adventures. Before Mukuda heads to sleep, Ninrir's voice reminds Mukuda to complete his weekly offerings, and seeing as there is a pudding and jelly sale in his online store, Mukuda offers up a variety of sweets to the goddess. The next morning, Mukuda checks out the quest board, learning that basic escort jobs are worth 1 point, herb gathering is worth 2 points, and goblin hunting will garner 3 points. Seeing as he needs 100 points to rank up, Mukuda estimates that it may take around 2 to 3 months, but Fel orders Mukuda to take all the goblin slaying quests to speed things up. As both boys argue using their telepathy, Fel gets an idea, managing to convince Sway to agree to hunt down some goblins, ultimately convincing Mukuda to take on a goblin hunting quest. Heading eastwards, the quest rewards 5 goblin kills with 3 silver coins and 3 points, a reasonable offer for hunting goblins. After a few minutes of searching, our trio stumble onto 3 goblins, but in mere moments, Sway shoots them down with her acid spit. Mukuda is thrown off when the quest requires Mukuda to slice off a goblin's ear as proof of a successful hunt, traumatizing Mukuda as he screams whilst harvesting the ears. Having made too much noise, another army of goblins approaches our trio, but Sway gets to work dispatching them one by one. Not satisfied, both Sway and Fel drag Makuta toward the nearby goblin settlement, ultimately managing to rack up quite a few hundred goblin corpses. Moving on to harvesting the goblin ears, Makuta wonders what they'll do with the remainder of the goblin bodies, fearing that it may attract other monsters or even create a dungeon itself. Fel reckons they should leave the corpses be and let nature do its magic, but Makuta refuses, asking if Sway herself could melt down the bodies. Happily obliging, Sway ends up growing massively in size after cleaning up a fraction of the corpses, and when Makuta checks Sway stats, Makuta sees that Sway has evolved into a big slime. Having gained the skill to proliferate, Sway shows off her skill to change size at will, splitting her body apart into smaller Sways only to begin dissolving the remainder of the goblin corpses. Makuta is amazed by how overpowered Sway has gotten, but seeing as it's almost lunchtime, Makuta declares they'll be having bread today. Changing things up, Makuta purchases a variety of breads with savory fillings, intriguing Sway as she discovers different meats within each bread. As Fel tucks into the meal, Makuta indulges in some coffee to wake himself up, a little disappointed that his plan to rank up slowly has been ruined, as the goblins they racked up in a single day have garnered him enough points to reach rank F already. Returning to the guild, Makuta submits the horde of goblin ears he had collected, but this ends up causing a stir at the guild, stressing Makuta out when the guild master himself asks to speak with Makuta. Guided by Annette out back, Willem the guild master greets Makuta, grateful for Makuta for taking out the goblin settlement near their town. Makuta is shocked that Willem has deduced that Fel is indeed a Fenrir, but more importantly, Willem reads a message from the royal palace, informing Makuta that the royals and nobles are aware of our trio's presence in their town, and that they'll leave Makuta alone. Makuta celebrates a happy accident, suddenly hearing that Willem is willing to promote Makuta to a C rank, but Willem would like Makuta to do him a couple favors. Makuta fears that Willem has some devious quest lined up for him, but Willem corrects Makuta, uttering that he actually needs Fel to take on some A rank and S rank quests for him. With Fel agreeing, Willem says there are a few quests that have been lying dormant for ages. Plus, Willem will ensure no one gets in Makuta's way when taking on the quest. Seeing as it's the perfect time, Makuta finally shows Willem and Johan the Chimera and Ortho's corpses he had been keeping secret, reasoning that the two men would be trustworthy enough to deal with them. But Willem fears that he won't have enough money to pay for such valuable monster corpses. The men settle for butchering up the Blue Orc, an S-rank monster, and an Orc King, another borderline S-rank creature, both powerful beings that Fel was easily able to slay. Sway gets motivated to hunt down powerful monsters just like Fel, all whilst Willem tells Makuta to come back once Johan finishes butchering up the monsters. Plus, he'll give Makuta his C-rank license tomorrow as well. That night, Makuta reasons they should switch things up from the normal fried food, opting to cook a meal with vegetables. Makuta first boils some rock bird, only to have Sway help him shred the bird, only to finish the first meal by adding some sauce to the bird and vegetables. Next, Makuta gets started on stir-frying a portion of the rock bird with some vegetables, ultimately serving up the dishes to Fel and Sway, all whilst indulging in a beer himself. Makuta chooses to combine the dishes with bread, all dusting off the dishes as Makuta voices how proud he is that Sway wasn't picky about what she was served. Noticing Fel cramped in his sleeping space, Makuta offers to lay down a futon to help Fel sleep, only for everyone to finally head to bed. The next day, Makuta heads to the guild to collect his guild license, amazed that a C-rank card is silver and that C-rank adventurers only need to complete a quest every 6 months. Finally, Willem shows off the payout Makuta will be receiving for his monster corpses, first starting with 461 gold coins for the initial monster corpses with the red serpent. Next is 1,415 gold coins for the ogres in the second pile, and finally is the payment for clearing up the goblins and their settlement, totaling a final payout of 1,946 gold coins. Willem admits it's the biggest amount of money they've paid a single adventurer, plus Makuta knows he still has leftover fund for his other adventures, fearing that his 2,000 plus gold coins will draw in other attackers. Willem does remind Makuta that he still needs to take on 2 quests to keep up his end of the bargain, starting with hunting down a metal lizard along with a pack of bloody hornbulls. Willem asks that Makuta hunt the metal lizard first, as their nest is meant to be at the foot of the Pascal Mountain and will take a 2-day carriage ride to get there. The blue lizard definitely has a favorite food, but there are no documents on what it may be, Plus, the lizard is immune to most physical attacks due to its tough metal exterior. Mukuda secretly utters that Fel had hunted one in the past, but moving on, Willem says the pack of bloody hornbulls are west of their location and are a current issue for newbie adventurers. Willem warns against the bull's dangerous pack size, but Fel can only think about all the beef they can eat, exciting the trio as the guild is willing to pay for half of the bulls they slay. Since they'll depart tomorrow, Mukuda heads to visit Lambert, asking to purchase a new bag. Lambert gladly shows Mukuda a few bags made from different animals at different price points. But Mukuda says Sway will be the final decider, seeing as she'll be carried around in it. Surprised to see Sway pick out the cheapest bag made of leather. Browsing around the store, Mukuda takes note of a belt that can store his sword, but it costs 6 gold coins. Next, Mukuda spots a fancy coin purse for a single coin, only to be drawn to new boots as well. Lambert says Mukuda's total will be 11 gold coins, but seeing as Mukuda saved his life and fed them expensive food, Lambert is willing to give Mukuda the items for free. Before Mukuda departs, Lambert asks if Mukuda has any red serpent skin left, but Mukuda apologizes since he sold everything to the guild. As Mukuda promises to sell some of his monster droppings to Lambert next time, they part ways, only for Fel to request some snake for dinner. Seeing as they have a big day tomorrow, Mukuda agrees to fulfill Fel's wish, first battering up some chunks of serpent meat only to double deep fry them. Instantly, Fel and Sway swoop in and devour the meal. And seeing as they recently restocked on food, Mukuda is more than happy to feed them until they're stuffed. Once Fel and Sway are satisfied, Mukuda reasons he should fry up some extra and store them for later, ending the night with a beer to accompany his meal, all while Sway and Fel knock out for the night. Heading towards the mountain where the metal lizards reside the next day, Mukuda tries guiding Fel, but relying on his keen senses, Fel darts towards a cave, having detected a lizard resting inside. Slowly descending the cave, the gang notices a metal lizard off in the distance, but it seems to be glowing. Mukuda appraises the lizard to be a mithril lizard, suspecting it mutated after devouring the nearby mithril ore, and seeing as there are no other lizards nearby, Fel will have to engage it. Fel explains that mithril is quite durable and highly resistant to magic, worrying Mukuda, but in an instant Fel's lightning spell fries the lizard, smirking as he reminds Mukuda that he is a legendary Fenrir. As Mukuda stores away the lizard's corpse, he reasons he should gather some mithril for himself, wondering if he could craft a blade or some armor. Fel gets annoyed, declaring that Mukuda won't need any mithril in his arsenal, as his barrier is stronger than mithril and his attacks are far more efficient than any mithril blade. And seeing as Fel is still energetic, they all rush to take on the bull quest. After a while of traveling, our trio stand before the horde of bulls, prompting Mukuda to wait atop a hill whilst Fel deals with the monsters. Surprisingly, Sway herself wants to hunt down monsters as well, quickly meeting up with Fel as they use the tall grass to their advantage, ultimately pouncing and massacring the nearby bulls. Mukuda is completely horrified at how strong his familiars are, but nonetheless gets started with collecting the bulls' corpses, grateful to Sway and Fel for helping with transferring them into his item box. For a quick lunch, the gang munch on some sandwiches stuffed with orc and rockbird, all whilst Mukuda flushes down the meal with some cola. Intrigued, Sway asks to taste the carbonated beverage, piquing Fel's interest as well, only for everyone to wrap up lunch. As the sun begins to set, Mukuda shows off the mithril lizard Fel has hunted, shocking Johan and Willem as the last sighting of a mithril lizard was 400 years ago, plus the discovery of a mithril vein is the 4th of its kind. Mukuda realizes how catastrophic his findings are, especially since the mithril lizard, along with the discovery of the mithril vein, will have to be reported to the city lord and the king, but luckily Mukuda will get paid around 5,000 gold for a job well done. Mukuda panics at the amount of money he'll be holding, but Willem says they need to gather the funds first, asking Mukuda to keep everything discussed a secret for now. To make things worse, Mukuda reveals they completed the bull's quest as well, wrapping up the day as they leave the guild, stressed about all the attention he'll get if people find out what Fel is capable of. Regardless, Mukuda chooses to treat the gang with their newly harvested beef, starting off by slicing up several steaks only to season and sear them carefully. Serving up the first round of steaks, the gang immediately shiver at the plump and savory beef steaks, prompting Mukuda to serve up another round, but this time alongside some garlic steak sauce. As our trio eat till their heart's content, Mukuda is seen doing the dishes, flattered by Fel, who says he will only eat things that Mukuda cooks him moving forward. Mukuda is grateful to Fel and Sway for making his life easy, but as he heads to bed that night, he quickly remembers to offer up some sweets to Ninrir, even adding a few extras since Ninri personally requested specific sweets. As Mukuda's offering is sent to Ninrir, a few other voices can suddenly be heard in his head, revealed to be Agni, Kisharl, and Rusalka, fellow goddesses that are jealous of the tasty treats Ninrir has been receiving. Ninrir says she is simply accepting offerings after blessing Mukuda, but when the other girls see that Ninrir had only given Mukuda a minor blessing, they offer to bless Mukuda in exchange for sweet offerings as well. Kisharl says she is the goddess of earth, whilst Agni is the goddess of fire, both elemental affinities that Mukuda currently possess, and seeing as the goddess of creation may scold the girls for giving out to many blessings, they'll simply give Mukuda minor blessings like Ninrir. Mukuda secretly wonders if he could deny such offers, especially since it's never been heard of for someone to have more than one blessing. But having heard enough of Mukuda's whining, Agni and Kisharl both bless Mukuda regardless. With the girls excited to receive their offerings, we see off to the side Rusalka, the water goddess, begin to cry and not want to be left out. But she also doesn't want to bless Mukuda, seeing as he doesn't have an affinity for water magic. As Mukuda racks his brain to cheer everyone up, he suddenly notices Sway checking on him, swiftly asking for Rusalka to give her blessing to Sway, a perfect candidate. Happily obliging, Rusalka ends up fully blessing Sway, all suddenly demanding to be given their offerings now. Seeing as he has to keep up his end of the bargain, Mukuda purchases a box full of sweets, sending the offering up to the goddess only to collapse into his bed exhausted. Mukuda chooses to check his stats, amazed at how stacked they are, reasoning that Sway and himself should try out their new powers. Heading into a forest the next day, Mukuda confirms that his fire and earth magic have been severely boosted, and it seems he isn't as fatigued after casting a decent amount of spells. Up next, Sway tries out her new powers, dazzling everyone when she manages to conjure a massive water ball on her first go, only to decimate a nearby tree. To top things off, Sway's slashing attacks easily shred several trees at once, prompting Mukuda to instruct Sway to only attack monsters with her new powers. When Fel asks to spar Sway, Mukuda immediately forbids such a thing. Instead, Mukuda tries out his new rock wall skill, all whilst Fel heads off to do some hunting. When Fel returns with a black serpent corpse, Mukuda shows off a new house he made with his earth magic, but sadly Fel and Sway are more fixated on dinner. Waking up early the next day, the gang admit the house helped, only for Mukuda to declare they'll be delivering the serpent Fel hunted to Lambert. Back in town, Mukuda visits Johan, who shows off the remainder of the bull meat, all whilst handing Mukuda the remainder of his pay for the bulls. Johan reports that Willem is out speaking to the lord of the city about the mithril lizard, but in the meantime, Mukuda asks to sell the black serpent, but he'll be keeping the flesh and skin. Back at the inn, Mukuda shows off a new meat grinder he had purchased online, showing off the device to be able to mince up the bull meat, adding in some minced orc general meat as well. Mukuda gets to work frying some onions only to combine the meats, seasonings, and various other ingredients, ultimately shaping the mixture into patties with Sway's help. Choosing to store some in his item box for later, only to begin frying up the patties, serving them up alongside some hamburger sauce. With a single bite, our trio stuffed their faces with the juicy patties, plus Mukuda reveals he had added cheese in some of the patties. Later that day, Mukuda is annoyed at the soap bar he's been given since it doesn't produce any bubbles, choosing to purchase some from his online stores along with other bathroom amenities. Mukuda reasons it should be a suitable gift as well when they visit Lambert, but to make things less suspicious, Mukuda transfers over the liquids into more bland containers. Off to the side, Sway enjoys soaking in water, making Mukuda crave taking a bath in this new world. That night, Mukuda presents the black serpent skin he obtained to Lambert, something Lambert swipes up for 50 gold. Moving on, Mukuda reveals he is also a merchant guild member, asking for Lambert's advice on the bathroom products he bought. At first glance, Lambert is impressed by the scent the soap is giving off, but as Mukuda mindlessly rambles on about the cleaning products he is presenting to Lambert, he suddenly stops himself, wondering if he said too much. Luckily, Lambert reveals that he had been looking for an anniversary gift to give his wife, and since his wife loves to take baths, Mukuda's items will be the perfect gift. Hearing that Lambert has a bathtub, Mukuda asks to see it for himself, amazed to see the finely crafted tub as Lambert reveals it cost a few hundred gold to create altogether. Seeing Mukuda fixated on his bathtub, Lambert says he'll introduce Mukuda to a shop that sells bath, prompting Mukuda to leave behind one of each amenity for Lambert to try out himself before he officially gifts them to his wife. The next day, Makuta returns to see how Lambert likes the products, but surprisingly Lambert's wife, Marie, is present. Marie reveals that Lambert looks stunning and smelt amazing after bathing last night, and when Marie tried out the product herself, she immediately knew such products would be a hit. Since Makuta doesn't have a store of his own, Marie and Lambert offered to help sell the bathroom amenities Makuta gave to them. But Makuta is quite hesitant. As Makuta returns to the others, he reports that Lambert will be selling his bottled bathroom amenities moving forwards. And seeing as Willem seems to be back, Makuta has Fel and Sway wait outside whilst he heads into the guild. Upon entering into Willem's office, Makuta is dazzled by the stacks of gold Willem was able to fetch for the Mithril Lizard and Mithril Vein, totaling 5,800 gold coins. Before Makuta can think about the bathtub he can purchase with such a fortune, Annette enters the room, reporting that a swarm of wyverns have attacked several low-ranking hunters near the Western Plains. Luckily, the hunters that were attacked have survived, but most of them are on the brink of death. Entering into the main room of the guild, Makuta notices multiple adventurers beaten up and bruised, and seeing as there aren't enough healing potions for everyone, Makuta offers up some of his high-quality healing potions. Upon applying them to the injured, the potions instantly cleanse and heal all wounds, giving Willem the chance to make an emergency announcement, asking for all C rank and above adventurers to slay the wyverns before they attack their town. As Willem's words rally together the surrounding adventurers, Fel's voice suddenly rings throughout the room, uttering that Fel himself will take out the wyverns. Willem admits that it would be much appreciated, promising to pay Makuta handsomely if Fel succeeds, but Fel only cares about devouring the wyvern flesh. Departing immediately, Fel escorts our gang through some grassy terrain, only to halt when they all spot wyverns circling them from above. Makuta appraises the wyverns to be creatures that hunt in packs and have poisonous stingers for their tails, but Fel is not one bit afraid, instead using the opportunity to teach Sway how to fight aerial monsters. With Makuta staying behind, Sway rides Fel in a battle, only for Fel to be forced to evade the wyverns diving towards them. Fel instructs Sway to target the wyvern's head or wings, but on her first go, Sway only manages to land a hit on a wyvern's wings, sending it plummeting from the skies. Fel still congratulates Sway for landing a hit on a wyvern, instantly decapitating the lone wyvern, only for Sway and Fel to lock onto the other wyverns swarming them. Although Makuta is far away, he still feels the impact from Fel and Sway's battle, but having gotten too distracted, a lone wyvern sneaks up on Makuta. As the wyvern attacks with its tail, Makuta is once again protected by Fel's barrier, but before the wyvern can attack Makuta again, Sway appears, absorbing and blowing the creature away. Right on cue, Fel monstrously appears behind the wyvern, instantly shredding the creature only to clean up the rest not too long after. Seeing as they've earned their lunch, Makuta heads to retrieve the leftover patties he had prepared earlier, declaring that he'll be frying the patties to create a different dish. With a light coating of breadcrumbs, Makuta presents a stack of crispy and juicy deep-fried patties, all enjoying their lunch under the gorgeous blue sky and luscious fields, all whilst Willem and the other guild members await our hero's return. As night falls, our trio finally return to the guild, reporting that all the wyverns have been eliminated. The adventurers in the guild immediately begin to celebrate, all whilst Willem utters that half of their adventurers would have been wiped out if it weren't for Fel. Funnily enough, Fel utters that they took so long because they had lunch afterwards. Makuta starts his report by declaring that they collected 13 wyverns in total, and that most of them are intact, so the guild can buy the corpses, but Makuta wants the wyvern's flesh. Willem says since the guild is low on funds, they'll butcher the wyverns and only purchase half of them, cutting to later that night where Makuta gets ready for bed. Realizing that he needs to offer up some sweets to the goddess, Makuta suddenly gets contacted by Agni, who demand her offerings, only for Ninrir to privately speak with Makuta asking for a larger portion than the others. Kishar, on the other hand, asks to try out the soap and shampoo Makuta showed to Lambert, only for Rusalka to request similar meals to the ones Makuta makes for Fel and Sway. Annoyed, Makuta reminds the goddesses that their secret messages will be exposed once he sends everything to the goddesses, infuriating Agni as she demands to be sent booze to make things fair. With our trio heading through town the next day, Makuta can't help but hear others admiring them from afar. But first things first, Makuta visits a Lario company to check out their bathtubs. The store clerk asks if Makuta is considering buying a house, starting off by showing a brown tub for 300 gold, only to move onto a little more expensive one that can regulate its temperature better. Finally, the store clerk shows off a white tub that is the most popular yet expensive one, but seeing as he doesn't care for the color of the tub, Makuta asks to purchase the green tub. The store clerk is surprised at the quick decision, asking if Makuta needs a payment plan, but Makuta simply pays for the tub in full. After storing it in his item box, Makuta says they'll be leaving town, heading deep into the forest where he can finally make use of the bathtub. In the meantime, Fel runs off to do some hunting, leaving Sway and Makuta to map out a general area for their tub, only for Makuta to erect stone walls to encase them in. Next, Sway is tasked with filling the tub with water, only for Makuta to heat up the water with his fire magic. Taking charge, Makuta starts by scrubbing himself down, only to finally indulge in the steamy goodness that is the warm bath water, remembering to add bath salts to help hydrate his body. After a long bath, Makuta and Sway down a pint of milk each, both wondering where Fel is. Seeing as he has time, Makuta gets started on preparing the wyvern meat, first slicing up some onions only to thinly cut up the wyvern meat. Into a pot, Makuta tosses all the ingredients and brings it up to a boil, only to serve the mixture onto a bed of rice. Makuta finds it strange that Fel has yet to return, so he reasons he should start on another meal that will take up some time. Purchasing some more vegetables and seasoning, Makuta dices up some carrots, onions, and potatoes, only to portion out chunks of wyvern and beef meat. Next, Makuta fries the meat, adding the remaining ingredients alongside some sauces and wine, ultimately creating a wyvern stew. With the sun beginning to set, Sway suddenly detects Fel nearby, but surprisingly Fel has brought the corpse of a dragon he slayed. Makuta is speechless upon hearing that Fel slayed a earth dragon, and seeing as Fel is quite satisfied with his hunt, Makuta reminds Fel that they can't bring the dragon to the guild as it'll be too expensive for them to purchase. More importantly, Fel is able to sniff out the sweet scents of the stews Makuta prepared, but Makuta states they won't be having dinner until Fel cleans himself up. Searching through his online store, Makuta chooses to pick out some grooming products for pets, only to begin brushing out Fel's fur to untie some knots. Moving on, Makuta begins splashing Fel with some water to prep him for the shampoo, but seeing as it's taking longer than usual, Makuta uses Sway as a shower to spray down Fel. Finally, Makuta and Sway begin scrubbing down Fel with shampoo, rinsing him off only to combine fire and wind magic to dry Fel off. With it now being dinner time, Makuta first serves up the beef bowls to Fel and Sway, all appreciating the flavors that come with eating wyvern meat with rice, plus the pickled ginger cleanses the palate. Seeing as the wyvern stew will taste better tomorrow, the gang settle for eating the beef bowl today, only for Makuta to declare that Fel will be taking a bath every once or twice a month to ensure Fel is clean and hygienic. Returning to town, Makuta shows off the earth dragon Fel slayed, but Willem and Johan are in complete disbelief, both refusing to touch the creature, seeing as every part of the dragon is extremely valuable. Luckily, Willem mentions that the guild master from Dolan is quite knowledgeable on dragons, and seeing as Dolan is close to the sea, the gang get excited. Wrapping up his stay in town, Makuta makes sure to say his farewells to everyone, receiving a letter meant for the guildmaster Dolan along with a map Willem had marked to help with Makuta's travel. The season ends with our trio finally departing for Dolan, but the gang remember to set up camp that night and try the wyvern stew Makuta had made the previous day, exciting Fel and Sway for what other meals Makuta has in store for them. In a creepy-looking forest, we see Fel easily electrocuting several venomous tarantulas, but Sway is sad he didn't get to fight. Fel orders for Makuta to make them a delicious meal since they've been traveling all day, but first things first, Makuta stores the tarantulas in his item box, and upon checking up on his remaining meat supplies, he states they'll be having gyozas. With everyone excited, Makuta first opens his online grocery skill and purchases some gyoza wrappers and seasoning, and with the supplies arriving, Makuta gets to work prepping the ingredients only to combine them all together with the seasoning. Finally, Makuta begins delicately wrapping each individual gyoza, and with Sway helping, Makuta finishes his prep work only to move on to frying them. With a pan filled with gyozas, Makuta makes sure to fry the puffy pastries with a flour water mixture, and by topping off the dish with some soy sauce, Makuta proudly shows off his soy sauce gyoza dish. Within mere seconds, Fel gobbles down the plate, mesmerized by the intricate meat and sauces accompanying the crispy texture. And as both Sway and Fel devour Makuta's cooking, we pan out to see a creature spying on them. After Makuta has finished feeding Sway and Fel, Mukuda himself begins to dig in, but suddenly a small red dragon darts towards Mukuda only to cling onto his face. Immediately, Fel recognizes the creature to be a pixie dragon, a rare breed of small dragons. But funnily enough, the dragon seems to be fixated on Mukuda's gyozas. Upon feeding the creature a gyoza, Mukuda can't help but adore the creature gobbling down his cooking. And when Mukuda hands the creature the rest of his plate, Fel warns Mukuda that the small dragon is actually a powerful magical creature. When the dragon finishes up its meal, it immediately darts towards Mukuda's head only to emit a bright light. And before Mukuda knows that the dragon has become Mukuda's familiar. Strangely, Mukuda can now speak with the dragon, and with Sway excited by their new friend, both Fel and the dragon seem to get along quite well as they're curious as to what other foods Mukuda will whip up for them. Before the gang departs, the dragon reminds Mukuda to give it a name, and seeing how the dragon is quite small, Mukuda settles on the name Dora. Dora is immediately annoyed at the childlike name, especially since it's been alive for more than 100 years. But nothing can be done now, as Dora will be part of their party moving forward. Cutting over to the city of Spinning Krell, we see Mukuda registering Dora as his familiar at the Adventurers Guild, but immediately Guildmaster Rodolfo comes to greet Mukuda. Rodolfo is amazed at the pixie dragon Mukuda had tamed, giggling since someone he knows would have killed to see Dora, but needing Mukuda to complete a special mission. Rodolfo asks if Mukuda can investigate a nearby forest. Rodolfo says there have been lots of monsters in the nearby forest as of lately, and they must resolve the issue fast as the town tend to harvest the webbing from the insects in the forest for their goods. Plus, Dora reassures Mukuda that the spiders and centipedes they face will be no issue for him. As Mukuda and his party chat telepathically, Mukuda suddenly remembers the tarantulas they caught, and when he shows Rodolfo, Rodolfo is completely speechless as the tarantulas would have normally taken an entire party to trim down before they reproduce. Thanking the gang, Rodolfo says the tarantula's shells and webbing are very expensive, but most importantly, Mukuda's familiars are intrigued to taste the monster's plump flesh. Curious as well, Mukuda agrees to sell off the tarantulas but asks for their meat to be left for them, leading the gang to stroll through town as the tarantulas are butchered. Stopping by a clothing store, Mukuda sees a fresh new shirt is worth a gold coin and 5 silver coins, an absurd price, but it makes sense for the material, especially since it's the best in town. Getting pumped up, Mukuda cries that he'll shop for some new things whilst he is in town, and after a long day of shopping, the gang return to the guild. Meeting up with Rodolfo, we see the legs of the tarantulas resembling some gorgeous crab legs, and with a single bite of the plum steamed meat, Mukuda becomes blown away by the succulent flavors. Getting an idea, Mukuda heads into the forest and whips up some fried rice, salad, an omelet, and some spring rolls with the meat, and with the gang celebrating Dora's admission into their party, they all begin to dig into the meal. Bite after bite, the refreshing and savory flavors all intermingle with each other, and before Mukuda forgets, he chooses to grill some of the tarantula legs, just like he would crab legs. Immediately, the others swarm Mukuda's grill, forcing Mukuda to share them. In the middle of the meal, Dora reveals that he had smelled Mukuda's cooking when he was in the city of Carolina, but this means that the sudden influx of monsters in the nearby forest must have been Dora's existence, as the monsters were simply trying to scare Dora away. Regardless, the gang wrap up their meal, and as we cut to later that night, Mukuda and Sway are seen cooling off in a hot steam bath. Settling in for the night, Mukuda wonders if he is forgetting something, but as we cut to the next day, Mukuda is seen selling the remainder of the tarantula shells from the legs they devoured yesterday. As Mukuda hands Rodolfo some leftover meat, he remembers that he still needs someone to help process the earth dragon Fel hunted down, prompting Mukuda to ask if Rodolfo knows anyone in Dolan that can help process the earth dragon corpse. Caught off guard, Rodolfo cries that Mukuda can buy an entire kingdom with the dragon corpse. So Rodolfo chooses to hand Mukuda a piece of paper asking for Elland, the guild master that resides in the dungeon city of Dolan, and with the men parting ways, Mukuda continues his travels. Not before long, the gang lay their eyes on Dolan, the dungeon city, and as Fel zips the gang towards the city's gates, they all agree to line up before they can enter the city's walls. Immediately, the towering statue of Fel and the unique flying Dora catches the attention of the city's guards, and with Mukuda reassuring everyone that he is a registered adventurer and merchant, we suddenly see Elrond the Guildmaster appear to greet Mukuda. Immediately, Elrond's gaze is fixated on Dora, and as Elrond invites our gang inside, he offers up a fancy mana-imbued branch for Dora to sit on, but Dora could care less as he lays beside Mukuda on the couch. Fascinated, Elrond is seen noting down Dora's behavior, and while serving Mukuta some tea, Elrond tries feeding Dora some flower nectar, but Dora seems disgusted by the drink. Creepily, Elrond jots down Dora's every move, and having learned about Mukuta needing help with butchering an Earth Dragon, Elrond excitedly offers to process the Earth Dragon immediately. Stepping outside, Elrond is scolded by Ugger, who reminds Elrond he has a merchant guild's meeting this afternoon, leading Elrond to suit up and begin preparations to harvest the dragon. Elrond still remembers back 274 years ago to when he was a B-rank adventurer that was not allowed to process a slain dragon in the past. And after Elrond became an S-rank, he despaired since there was never another dragon slain. Whilst Elrond continues on about his backstory, Mukuta swiftly pulls out the Earth Dragon corpse, and upon laying it in front of Elrond, Elrond can't help but begin inspecting the magnificent creature's body. Whilst Elrond begins measuring each and every part of the Earth Dragon, he asks what Dora tends to eat, and upon hearing that Mukuta usually feeds his familiars meats and vegetables, Elrond can't help but be shocked. Elrond says normally Fenris eat meats while slimes eat anything. As for pixie dragons, they are meant to eat high mana foods, something Dora says he has never done before as he prefers meat. Curious, Elrond asks why Mukuta and Dora are staring at each other, but upon hearing that Mukuta is telepathically communicating with Dora, Elrond cries that he must know how Mukuta is doing this. Luckily, Ugger steps in and stops Elrond from scaring Mukuta away, but this annoys Fel as he orders Elrond to hurry up and extract the dragon meat. Freaked out, Elrond hears that Mukuta and the gang only want to taste the Earth Dragon's flesh, and with the gang agreeing to share some of the meat with Elrond, we see Mukuta booking an inn to stay at. Outside, the entire gang seems exhausted as Elrond had spent most of their time together questioning them on the knowledge and encounters with other dragons, and seeing as they won't get to taste the Earth Dragon today, Mukuta declares they'll stuff themselves with food from the online grocery. With Dora intrigued by the online store, we see Mukuta opt for some marinated meat, plus he purchases an Iron Genghis Khan pot. The gang asks what the pot will be used for, but Mukuta simply answers by heating up the pot and placing vegetables and meat onto the pot, and to top things off, Mukuta douses the meal in some sauce before serving up the dish. Having served up some lamb and mutton, the party digs and only to praise the dish's tender and rich textures, and as the gang stuff their faces, they ultimately ask for seconds. To wrap up the meal, Mukuta unveils a box of sweets, and by unwrapping one of the sweets and feeding it to Sway, Sway immediately jumps at the delectable treats. As the gang spend the rest of the night sharing the desserts, we see Mukuta exhausted the next day as his familiars were up all night. Greeting Ugger, Mukuta asks how Elrond is doing, and funnily enough, Elrond announces that he had spent the entire night measuring and inspecting the Earth Dragon's body. Finally beginning to harvest the dragon, Elrond says he'll need to drain the blood from the creature, leading Elrond to take out a fancy blue knife made out of mithril. With perfect confidence, Elrond runs the blade along the dragon's thick exterior, but suddenly the blade snaps in two, a horrific sight as the mithril blade was the sharpest weapon the guild had. Realizing that they won't be able to eat the dragon, Fel can't help but slump to the floor, despairing at the situation. And seeing as the guild requires more mithril, Fel jumps up only to declare he'll fetch some mithril for them. Mukuta stops the feisty Fel, as it seems Elrond is too tired to use the mithril even if they obtain it today. But Fel declares he'll gather some mithril or ahead of time, something Mukuta can't allow as his three familiars entering the dungeon and causing chaos would draw too much attention to them. To defuse the situation, Mukuta offers to cook everyone a meal, only to whip out some ingredients. First, Mukuta stir-fries some orc meat alongside some vegetables, and by using up any remaining sauce they had left over from last night, along with topping off the dish with some garlic and sesame oil, Mukuta presents an orc kimchi bowl on a bed of rice. As a bonus, Mukuta cracks a raw egg on top of the bowl, and having waited long enough, the gang stuff their faces with the creamy meal, but Mukuta fears he won't be able to stop his familiars from rampaging if the harvesting of the Earth Dragon is delayed further. At the same time, we see Ninrir and the other goddesses annoyed that Mukuta has yet to deliver them their monthly care packages, but from the corner of their eyes, the girls quiver upon seeing two other gods asking what they're doing. Switching over to Mukuta, he is seen finally checking on the goddesses, but immediately Hephaestus, the god of blacksmithing, and Vahang, the god of war, greets Mukuta. Seeing this as perfect timing, Mukuta asks if Hephaestus could bless his equipment, a deed that could be easily done as Hephaestus agrees to upgrade Mukuta's weapon tiers in exchange for an offering of some alcohol. As for Vahang, he is interested in some of the otherworldly items Mukuta has, But interestingly, Mukuta doesn't seem interested in the god's blessings. As a compromise, Hephaestus agrees to bless Sway, whilst Vahan will bless Dora and Fel for their upcoming dungeon exploration. And just like that, Mukuta sends the gods their offerings as a thanks. Before Mukuta can make plans to enter the dungeon, he's reminded by Fel that they've already acquired some mithril from slaying the mithril lizard prior. And with Mukuta handing off some mithril to Sway, Mukuta asks that Sway craft a blade for him. Immediately, Sway swallows and spits out a shiny-looking sword. And although Mukuta says they now don't have to search for mithril in the dungeons, Fel cries that they should still check out the dungeon whilst they're in town. Back in his office, Elrond is quite depressed, having not been able to find a replacement blade to butcher the Earth Dragon. But luckily Mukuta has brought his own blade. Heading over to the dragon, Elrond grips the new mithril blade type, and with a single push, Elrond seamlessly glides the blade through the dragon's skin. Elrond wonders how Mukuta obtained such a majestic sword, but Mukuta makes up that a friend gave it to him. And now that Elrond can process the dragon, Elrond utters that it may take 3 days to butcher the beast before them. Seeing as they can't just sit idly by, Fel and Dora ask to explore the dungeon whilst they wait, but Mukuta says there is no need. At that moment, Sway adorably asks if they could enter the dungeon, words that ultimately sway Mukuta. Passing through town, Mukuta arrives at the dungeon gates only to hear that it may take upwards of a month to clear the 30 floors in the dungeon, and interestingly, no one has yet to explore the entire dungeon. Mukuta realizes that he hasn't prepared enough food for a 1-month exploration, and with Mukuta preparing to back out, Fel telepathically asks what Mukuta is doing. Mukuta says they need to prepare actual food to fight efficiently, and with Mukuta's familiars agreeing, the gang choose to do some shopping first. Immediately, Mukuta's party draws the attention of onlookers, and when Mukuta is called over to check out some meat and vegetables, he reasons he should stock up on some vegetables before tackling the dungeon. As for the meat, Mukuta is surprised to learn that monster meat is quite luxurious and expensive. So Mukuta says Fel can simply hunt for the meat they need. Settling on some bread and vegetables, Mukuta explores the town, some more only to spot a magic stove with 4 heating elements. Fel wonders why they need such a big stove, but suddenly a store clerk appears, allowing Mukuta to ask how strong the fire can burn. The clerk explains that there are magic stones used to heat the stove, plus there seems to be an oven compartment capable of roasting cockatrices whole, a feature Mukuta's portable gas stove doesn't have. Intrigued, Fel orders Mukuta to buy the stove, since Mukuta can cook new types of food for them. And with Dora begging Mukuta to purchase the stove as well, Mukuta agrees to fork over 860 gold coins for the stove. That night, Mukuta shows off the various pots and pans he purchased from his online store, and having made use of his new stove, Mukuta is able to stew some meats and vegetables while steaming some rice. With Mukuta asking Sway to help him with something, we cut to Mukuta serving up a bull and wyvern meat bowl for the gang, leading everyone to eat their fill. The next day, Mukuta reasons he should prepare some meals in case he is too tired to cook in the dungeon. So starting off, Mukuta strings up some orc meat only to fry and stew it just like if it were pork. Next is some steamed boar wrapped in cabbage, and needing to use up his leftovers, Mukuta whips up some stir-fry bowl and pepper topped off with any leftover sauces. Moving on to a hearty soup, Mukuta chops up some vegetables and begins simmering them alongside some orc meat. And for the final meal prep is some wyvern beef stew. As the sun sets, Mukuta stores away the 5 meals he has prepared, and by tomorrow Mukuta is excited to see Sway has completed the job he asked of him. Proudly, Sway shows off the mithril sword he crafted for Mukuta, but at that moment Ugger appears only to report that Elrond has finished butchering the Earth Dragon. With Mukuta and his party heading over to meet with Elrond, Mukuta can't help but be weirded out when he stumbles on Elrond admiring the dragon's blood he bottled up, but snapping out of it, Elrond shows off every part of the Earth Dragon he harvested. Although it took 3 days, Elrond says it was an amazing 3 days, plus Mukuta says he is happy to sell off any of the materials to the guild. Excited, Elrond says he wants 2 bottles of the dragon's blood, along with half of the dragon's liver to help produce elixirs, and to top things off, Elrond wants a dragon tooth to help craft a mighty sword. Mukuta is surprised Elrond doesn't want anything else, but Elrond says the 5 items are valued at 3,800 coins, so for now he'll give Mukuta 380 coins. Annoyed, Fel demands to know where the edible parts of the dragon are, leading Elrond to escort the gang into their freezer room. Entering a chilly space, the gang are impressed to see magical stones keeping the wrapped up meats inside fresh. News that allows Sway to help retrieve the dragon's meat, all whilst Mukuta stores them in his item box. Unable to wait any longer, Elrond allows Mukuta to visit his home to cook some meat for the gang. And having promised everyone such a thing, Elrond chooses to drag Mukuta to his home, all whilst avoiding his responsibilities as a guild master. Showing the gang to his backyard, Elrond watches as Mukuta retrieves his new stove, and interestingly, Elrond mentions how he has the item box skill as well. Apparently, Elrond was a warrior that wielded a sword alongside plant and wind magic. And whilst Elrond begins rambling on about his past, Mukuta gets to work cooking up some meat. First, Mukuta seasons the dragon meat with some salt and pepper. Next up is peeling and slicing up some carrots, potatoes, and onions, only to lay them on a pan next to the chunk of meat. Drizzling some oil and topping off the meat with some herbs, Mukuta places the pan into his preheated oven to begin roasting, a sight that makes the others begin to drool. After some time, Mukuta takes out the pan only to confirm that the meat has been cooked, and by slicing up the chunk of meat and serving it up with some garlic soy sauce, the gang sit down for a taste. With a single bite, Mukuta becomes speechless at the distinct flavors. Plus, it seems Mukuta's familiars are also dazzled by the meat's plump and unique flavor. Fel says the last dragon he ate was cooked with fire magic, but such a meal doesn't compare to Mukuta's cooking. And with Mukuta serving up seconds for everyone, Mukuta hears that Dora doesn't mind eating other dragons as long as they aren't pixie dragons. Off to the side, Mukuta sees Elrond tearing up as he was able to not only butcher a dragon, but also taste it, things Elrond could only dream of doing. With the gang heading home with a full stomach, Mukuta's familiars jump in excitement as they'll enter the dungeons tomorrow. But this reminds Mukuta to give his offerings before he departs. As Mukuta sifts through his online stores for some items, we zoom out to see the goddesses awaiting Mukuta's offerings. But just then Vahong and Hephaestus appear only to ask if the girls have given Mukuta a defensive skill. Realizing that Mukuta passing away will mean they can no longer get their offerings, the girls begin to panic. But Hephaestus says he has an idea. When Mukuta prepares to send off his offerings, he is suddenly contacted by Hephaestus, who offers up a blessing. And although Mukuta refuses, Hephaestus forcibly gives Mukuta a new skill. Heading to the dungeon the next day, Mukuta is surprised to run into Vianca, who has been asked to help out due to how busy it is in town. As Vianca fills out an entry registration for Mukuta and his familiars to enter the dungeon, she can't help but be captivated by how adorable and fluffy Fel is. With the gang finally heading to the dungeon's entrance, Mukuta is a little nervous, but with his familiars pumped, the gang begin to descend some stairs. Fel mentions how the monsters on the lower floors are too weak, and seeing as most adventurers can make a living hunting from the 10th to the 15th floor, Fel declares they'll be skipping such floors. Immediately, Mukuta rides Fel through the dungeon, and upon encountering some monsters, Fel simply charges through them. At that moment, Mukuta notices a stray arrow heading towards him, but luckily Fel's powerful barrier blocks such an attack. Something Fel notes is due to him stepping on a trap. Fel mentions how dungeons are like living creatures that draw in humans, and by slaying and absorbing humans, the dungeon is able to thrive. But sadly, such traps and monsters have no effect on Fel, as he easily evades the bombardment of projectiles only to leap over a trapdoor using some wind magic. Arriving on the 10th floor, Fel declares that the boss of the floor is a venomous tarantula, so the gang reason they should speedrun the boss. Outside the boss room, we see some adventurers gathered outside, and when Fel appears, Mukuta is forced to calm down the adventurers before they mistake Fel to be a monster. Seeing as Mukuta is a newbie to dungeons, the adventurers explain that parties that start fights get first priority on the loot and droppings, and other parties aren't allowed to intervene unless asked. And sadly, it seems there is already an existing party in the boss room. Forced to wait, Mukuta's familiars immediately grow impatient. But not before long, Mukuta spots the adventurers returning, having survived their battle. The adventurers report that they'll be leaving now since they have families. But Mukuta's gang excitedly enters the room only to be met by various tarantulas. Immediately, Dora conjures a fire spell that incinerates all the monsters. And interestingly, the tarantulas have dropped some items Mukuta stores in his item box. With the gang impatient, they rush towards the 11th floor boss, and immediately the gang are able to dispatch the army of orcs in the boss room. Before moving on, Mukuta's familiars mention how they're hungry, and with Fel leading the gang to a safe room where other adventurers are resting, they coincidentally bump into Iron Will. Choosing to catch up, Mukuta explains how his familiars have been dying to explore the dungeon, and with Mukuta introducing Dora, the pixie dragon, to the Iron Will members, the gang are forced to hold back their laughter. Up next is Sway, a slime Rita finds adorable, and whilst the girls hang out with Sway and Dora, Fel demands some food. Immediately perking up, Ironwool asks if they can eat as well, and with Mukuda happy to serve them. Mukuda takes out his wyvern stew whilst Rita slices up some of their bread to go along with the meal. Having craved Mukuda's cooking, the Ironwool members begin to stuff their faces, and before the Ironwool members can apologize for eating so much, Mukuda instead offers to serve everyone seconds. With everyone eating their fill, we see some adventurers watching their feast from afar, and with everyone parting ways, Ironwool mentions how they'll be exploring their current floor before descending. Getting to work, Mukuda's familiars are easily able to slay the dungeon bosses from the 12th floor all the way to the 15th, and before they know, they're traversing the 16th floor. Mukuda takes note of the change in the dungeon's environment, but suddenly Fel steps onto a trap, an action that creates a large rumbling sound. Upon seeing a massive boulder rolling down their path, Mukuda prepares to flee, but with the wave of his paw, Fel decimates the boulder. After some more time, Mukuda reports that they've made it to the 20th floor, but Dora and Fel still seem excited. At that moment, Sway calls out to everyone only to point Mukuda to a chest he found, and before Mukuda can rush to unveil the treasures hidden in the chest, Fel pulls Mukuda back only to remind Mukuda that this may be a trap set up by the dungeon. Realizing that Fel is right, Mukuda uses his appraisal skill to uncover that the chest will release poison when opened, a horrific discovery since Mukuda's minor blessing won't protect him. At that moment, Ninlil contacts Mukuda only to reveal that since Mukuda has multiple minor blessings layered on him, it would be the same as having a major blessing. Seeing as Ninrir says Mukuda will be able to withstand the poison, Mukuda rushes to open the chest only for the gang to be struck by fumes of poisonous gas. Sadly, it seems the chest is empty, a discovery that annoys Mukuda. But upon reaching the 21st floor, Mukuda bumps into a massive-looking chest. Upon appraising it, Mukuda sees that it is a mimic that may drop a chest when defeated, ultimately leading Mukuda to draw his mithril sword to slay the creature. When Mukuda opens the chest, the mimic springs to life and attacks Mukuda, but by swinging his sword around, Mukuda is able to slice up the mimic without issue. Inspecting the chest the mimic dropped, Mukuda is amazed to have found various rare jewels and a recovery ring, and upon descending to the next floor, Mukuda is amazed by the clearing they've run into. Although Fel is excited, he declares that he can smell something dangerous nearby, and with Mukuda riding Fel deeper into the floor, they suddenly are swarmed by some giant killer mantis with a B rank. Instantly, Fel begins to swell with magic, and with various streaks of lightning raining down, Fel easily slays the monsters. But this annoys Dora and Sway, who wanted to fight as well. Calming everyone down, Mukuda says everyone will get their turn, and with Dora up next, he is seen engaging a grizzly bear. As for Sway, he gets to face off against some poisonous butterflies, and seeing as they're approaching the boss of the floor, Mukuda reasons they should eat first before engaging the creature. Although Fel says the boss won't be a trouble for them, he still allows Mukuda to whip up a meal for them, and interestingly, Mukuda says they'll be having some domestic Japanese Wagyu steak. Mukuda reasons that they should have some pork, duck, chicken, and sandwiches as well, and whilst Mukuda feeds the gang the pre-cooked chicken and duck, he gets to work cooking up the remaining meats. Meal after meal, Mukuda and his familiars stuff themselves with the assorted meats, and with each plate dusted off, Mukuda chooses to check everyone's stats. Mukuda is glad to see Fel, Dora, and Sway's stats have risen by 50%, but when Mukuda checks his own, he is disappointed to see his stats haven't even been boosted by 5%. As the gang head through the floor, they suddenly notice a massive snake boss up ahead, a creature Mukuda appraises to be an S-rank Vasuki. Fel mentions how he has only faced a Vasuki 3 times in his life, and as the snake spits out its toxic fumes, Mukuda chooses to hide whilst his familiars take on the boss. Thanks to their blessings, the toxins have no effect on them, and as Fel electrocutes the creature, Sway melts away a patch of the boss skin only for Dora to dive through the snake, successfully slaying it without issue. Storing away the boss, Mukuda hears that they can enter the next floor by channeling a magic circle, and by making sure everyone is holding onto each other, the gang teleport to the next floor. Instantly, Mukuda takes note of the open mine shaft they're in, and as he peeks around a corner, he spots several giant monsters roaming the space. Before Mukuda can say anything, his familiars rush to clear up the monsters, and having walked for a decent amount of time, the gang enter into a safe area to have a meal. With no one else around, Makuta gets set up and begins serving up some pork soup alongside some hamburger sandwiches, and seeing as everyone has worked up an appetite, they all stuff themselves for a job well done. Cleaning things up, Makuta confirms that the sun should be setting around this time. But out of nowhere, Makuta notices several injured adventurers stumbling into the safe zone. As the adventurers begin healing their ally, they call out to Makuta to see if he has any spare potions, and upon lending them one of Sway's healing potions, the gang are surprised to see their allies' wounds being patched up immediately. Realizing Sway's potions are too abnormal, Makuta changes topics and asks if everyone is okay, only to be relieved to see that the party before him hasn't suffered any casualties. Introducing themselves as the A-Rank Party Tempest, the members agree to pay Makuta 15 gold coins for the high-quality potion, but Makuta says such a potion would normally cost 10 coins, so he offers to throw in some additional low-tier potions to make things fair. Getting to know each other, the Tempest party reveal that they encountered 3 Spriggans in the boss room, creatures that are larger than Minotaurs. The Tempest members mention how they first scouted the floor and recorded only 1 Spriggan, but now there seems to be 3, an issue Fel says he can easily take care of. With everyone resting for now, Makuta chooses to feed the Tempest members some pork chop sandwiches before they return to the surface. As for Makuta and his party, they continue strolling through the floor only to appear before the boss. Without issue, Makuta's familiars spring into action and take down the monsters before them. And interestingly, Makuta discovers a magic bag capable of storing many items, but time doesn't stop inside the bag. Using the bag to loot the area, Makuta promises to slay some monsters as well. But having reached the next floor, Makuta can't help but tremble in fear, all whilst his perfect defense skill bestowed onto him by Hephaestus protects him. As some more time passes, Makuta and his familiars easily traverse through floors 25 to 28, and upon reaching the second to last floor, Makuta is stunned to see the area is a massive desert. With Fel offering to escort everyone, Fel jogs for a few seconds only to cry out that it's so hot, especially since the sun is directly beaming down on them. Before Sway can melt away, Makuta lends Sway his bag to rest in, and luckily there seems to be some shade nearby. Fel chooses to erect his barrier to block some of the heat, and fearing that Fel's mana may be drained, Makuta opens his online store only to purchase some sun gear along with some electrolyte drinks. With the gang hydrating themselves with the drinks, Makuta follows up by purchasing some ice cream, and with each scoop the gang slowly feel their souls invigorated. Seeing as they need to keep moving, they stuff themselves with popsicles as they traverse the desert, and with Fel relying on his senses to track down the boss, they eventually run into a massive scorpion and worm, both creatures Makuta's familiars take down. With the sun setting, the blistering hot desert suddenly becomes freezing cold, forcing Fel to erect his barrier to trap in the warmth from their campfire. Relying on the online store, Makuta purchases some heating pads and additional layers of clothing. Plus, Makuta plans on serving up a warm, hearty meal for the gang. Getting to work, Makuta creates a broth by mixing together several seasonings, and by stewing some vegetables and rockbird, Makuta eventually adds some udon noodles along with some tempura to finish off the dish. As the gang slurp down the meal, they become satisfied by the warm broth slushing around in their stomachs. And with the boss being nearby, Makuta reasons they should rest up for the hectic day ahead. With the sun rising, the gang immediately enter in a battle with the stone guardian of the floor, but after some time, they claim victory over the golem only to head towards the teleportation circle. As the gang teleport to the final floor, Makuta becomes terrified upon seeing a behemoth creature before them, and having not been able to plan ahead, Dora and Sway take the lead and rush towards the boss. Interestingly, the boss is able to withstand Dora's fiery dive and Sway's acid bullets, and Fel reveals that behemoths are very durable against physical and magical attacks. As the behemoth charges the gang, they immediately disperse, only for Fel to swipe at the creature with no luck, but Makuta orders his familiars to keep piling on the attacks, as he believes the damage will eventually accumulate. As the 3 dance circles around the boss, they slowly pick away at the creature's defenses, and with Dora conjuring 2 icicles, he manages to break through the exterior of the boss. At that moment, the behemoth locks onto Makuta, and by charging up a dense breath, the boss fires a beam of dark magic at Makuta. Luckily, Fel has already intercepted the attack with an ice wall, and seeing as Sway's acid weakens the boss's defenses, Fel orders Sway to cover the creature in acid. Immediately, Sway expands its body and blasts the boss with acid, leading Dora to begin raining down various spells onto the boss. And for the finishing blow, Fel charges up a bolt of lightning that directly strikes the boss's weak spot. Seeing as the behemoth has been slayed, Mukuta celebrates only to see the magic sword Calibal made out of adamantite has been left behind, and fearing that it'll draw too much attention, Mukuta chooses to stash it away for now. Seeing as everyone is starving, Mukuta celebrates everyone's hard work by deep frying some rockbird, and by offering up 3 types of dipping sauces. Mukuta's familiars begin to dig in all whilst Mukuta begins deep frying some vegetables. To top things off, Mukuta deep fries some corn dogs only to smile, seeing his familiars overjoyed by his cooking. Back on the surface, we see Fel smashing a hole to exit the dungeon, and upon announcing that they've conquered the dungeon, the surrounding adventurers all gather to learn more. Right on cue, Elrond appears congratulating the gang, and upon returning back to the guild, Elrond has Mukuta explain everything he went through. Elrond says he was most worried about Dora, but this makes Mukuta offer up the items he found in the dungeon. This, of course, includes the jewelry box he found after slaying the Mimic. Seeing Elrond and Ugger stiffen up upon seeing the box, Mukuta reasons he should keep the adamantite sort of secret for now. And needing some rest, Mukuta and his party first wash off only to down some flavored milk. As Mukuta and his party are emphasizing the importance of washing themselves frequently, Fel suddenly announces that someone is calling for help nearby. Switching over to a nearby forest, we see a brother and sister fleeing from an orc, and sadly the girl suddenly trips, leading the boy to kneel beside his sister ready to defend her. Right on cue, Mukuta appears, and with Dora and Sway slaying the orc, Mukuta rushes to see if they're okay. Upon seeing Fel, the siblings begin crying as the massive wolf behind Mukuta is scary, but with Mukuta's reassurance, the siblings reveal their names to be Daryl and Iris. Mukuta is shocked to hear the siblings are from Dolan, as it takes a normal adult 3 hours to reach their current location by foot, and seeing as the siblings aren't explaining themselves, Mukuta promises the siblings can have the orc if they tell them what happened. Surprisingly, Daryl says he can store the orc with his item box, and apparently their father was an adventurer who entered the Dolan dungeons with his friends but never came back. Since then, Daryl and Iris have been helping their mother get by. But sadly one day, she collapsed, and it seems the town's priest couldn't heal her. The siblings cry that they need money to hire a royal priest to cure their mother, and with Mukuta crying as well after hearing such a tragic story, Mukuta fears that such an orc won't trade for much. With Mukuta wondering how he can help, he sees that the kids are hungry, and so, as Mukuta prepares to cook for everyone, he watches as the siblings play with his familiars. Wanting to treat the kids, Mukuta begins frying up some vegetables alongside some cockatrice breasts, and upon topping the meal with a sunny side egg, Mukuta presents some burgers and fries for the kids to indulge in. Immediately, the siblings dine on the delectable burgers. As for Mukuta's familiars, Mukuta has already prepared and pulled together the remaining ingredients to stack a multi-layered burger. With everyone eating their fill, Mukuta cleans up only for the siblings to graciously thank Mukuta, but Mukuta can't help but be hurt upon being called uncle. Regardless, whilst the kids sleep, Mukuta searches his online store for medicine to help out their mother, but Mukuta wonders if Sway's potions can help. Sadly, Fel says potions can't heal illnesses, and it seems only elixirs can. Mukuta fears that an elixir that can heal all illnesses doesn't exist, but upon remembering Elrond wanting the Earth Dragon's blood to craft his own elixir, Mukuta swiftly gathers some dragon liver and blood to perform his own experiments. First, Mukuta asks if Sway can concoct an elixir with the liver and blood, and while Sway begins crafting something, Mukuta gets to work whipping up a meal for the kid's sick mom. Mukuta reasons the meal should be rich in vitamins and nutrients, so he chops up various vegetables alongside some bacon only to simmer them with soy milk in order to create some hearty soup. At the same time, Sway announces that he has finished his crafting only to present 3 elixir vials, items Mukuta appraises to heal any ailment but can't extend anyone's lifespan. As Mukuta appraises Sway, he rushes to wake up the kids as they all board Fel, and before the sun sets, Fel manages to speed back to Dolan. With the kids excited, Mukuta prepares to hand Daryl the orc, but he mentions how he has medicine that may be able to heal their sick mom. Sadly, Mukuta says Daryl and Iris will have to trade him for the medicine, and luckily Mukuta is willing to take the orc Daryl has. Just like that, Mukuta seals their deal and hands Iris the elixir only to give Daryl the hearty soup he cooked prior. With the kids on the brink of tears, Daryl promises to grow up to be a merchant one day to make Mukuta proud, and just like that the kids rush back home. Returning to his inn, Mukuda praises his party for a job well done today, and upon checking everyone's level, it seems Fel is now level 921, having gained 10 levels, whilst Dora is now level 160, having grown from level 130, while Sway is level 88, having quadrupled his level from 22. With Mukuda's familiars excited by their growth, Mukuda hurriedly checks his stats, but sadly, it seems nothing has changed. At that moment, Mukuda notices a +1 stat next to his online grocery skill, and upon interacting with it, a massive burst of light gives way to the new online grocery tenant skill. With Mukuda's familiar checking out what is happening, they all wonder what the burger, meal, and desserts before Mukuda are, and seeing as the majority want to check out the desserts, the gang become glued to the array of new options before them. Immediately, Mukuda purchases some sweets, and by slicing them up and evenly dividing them amongst the crew, Mukuda watches as his familiars gulp down each sweet. As for Mukuda, he remembers to serve the gang a pudding each, only to indulge in some sponge cake whilst flushing everything down with some coffee. Before Mukuda serves second for the gang, he wonders what he is forgetting. And as we zoom out, we notice the gods and goddesses all freaking out.